Coming up next on Arizona Horizon's Journalist Roundtable, Governor Doug Ducey's administration will not pursue enforcement against ride-sharing companies, and Arizona House Republicans vote in favor of private caucuses. The Journalist Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Eight, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon's Journalist Roundtable. I'm Steve Goldstein in for Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Jim Small of the Arizona Capital Times, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Doug McCachern of the Arizona Republic. Howie, Governor Ducey will not continue strict enforcement and regulation of certain ride-sharing companies. Who's going to benefit from this?
Well, let's see. If you're the Uber or Lyft corporations, you get to keep making money by booking these rides. And if you're one of their drivers, you get to keep money because you get to keep picking up people and not have to worry you're going to get cited by the Department of Weights and Measures. This is a fight that actually goes back to the beginning of Lyft and Uber. We have laws in the books that say if you offer rides for money, you fit under the taxi regulations. Now, Weights and Measures said, well, wait a second, where do Lyft and Uber fit in? So they came in with some legislation, Lyft and Uber lobbyists, and said, well, here's how we can craft an exemption. And they got out of the legislature, and Governor Brewer said, well, this doesn't exactly protect the public in terms of insurance. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Weights and Measures has been citing these people as they find them, and Doug Ducey said, you know, I think we should stop citing them and we'll work out something else.
Now, you unofficially compared him to President Barack Obama. Can you give us some background on that?
Well, it's an interesting question. You know, if you've listened to our former governor, who has talked about Dreamers and the rest of the quote-unquote amnesty, they're saying, well, Barack Obama has decided that despite his requirement to ensure that the laws are enforced, he's decided not to enforce laws against immigrants. Well, I asked our governor, I said, does that make you Barack Obama for Uber? And he said, oh, no, this is totally different.
Well, that explains it. I understand the philosophy behind wanting free enterprise, lifting up government regulations, but you have to do it according to the law, and the law stipulates in Weights and Measures you have to perform these functions. I wonder what happens when the first time that a cop is standing there and an Uber car drives up and it makes it clear to the potential passenger that this is a driver from Uber. How does a cop react to that?
Better yet, what happens the first time that somebody with the minimal insurance you need to drive a car, which is $15,000 versus the $300,000 for a taxi, gets into an accident, injures a group of people? Who's going to take the PR blame for that? And is it going to be Doug Ducey?
Now, Jim, I spoke with the president of Total Transit this week, the owner of Discount Cab, and he was giving Governor Ducey the benefit of the doubt on this one. He was saying this is a good sign. This shows that Governor Ducey is looking to increase business. What do you think going forward this is going to mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that there's still going to be a fight over this issue, but really the landscape has changed. Instead of it going from a fight where you had the taxis on the one side fighting to even kill the bill like they did last year, to not even allow for some kind of a carve-out, I think really the discussion now moves from that into what are the terms of this carve-out going to be? How is this regulation going to look? And what the Total Transit position is, and it's one that certainly rings, I think, with the kind of keeping in line with this, the free market ideals, is if you're going to make something apply to the Uber and Lyft, the ride-sharing people, you need to make it apply to everybody. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
And this is really important because if you consider, in most cases, taxi drivers are independent contractors. So it was Total Transit, by arranging that, doing anything different than Uber and Lyft do? And why should they have to live under different rules?
Doug, does this indicate anything to you about Governor Ducey's administration? Is this really pro-jobs, pro-employment, pro-business?
It is a very pro-free market point of view, which is totally in keeping with his philosophy of life. I'm just kind of dubious as to whether or not it's legal.
Well, it's legal till somebody challenges it, I guess, and that's what it comes to.
And again, coming back to the president of Total Transit, he had said this is a chance for Arizona to really be a pioneer in this and really make regulations that make sense. Does anyone at this table have faith in that?
Well, I think you can. I mean, look, maybe we need a grand discussion of should we be regulating taxis? I mean, for a long time we didn't. And then that led to questions of, well, who's driving the taxis? Should they be drug tested? Well, okay, then let's have that discussion again. Look, we know that the laws always run behind the technology, whether it's scientific technology, whether it's rideshare technology. Well, fine, well, let's have that update, but let's make it fair and make sure that we're not creating winners and losers.
Jim, who's going to lead the charge in this legislation?
Unclear yet. Last year there's obviously a number of proponents in both the House and Senate who were really actively involved in it. But so far we haven't seen any legislation get introduced yet. I'm sure it'll be coming, probably coming through the Commerce committees in the House and Senate would be the natural place for it.
Also wonder a bit too the fact that Andy Tobin, former House Speaker, is now Director of Weights and Measures. Is he going to be involved in this particular legislation? Behind the scenes?
Maybe. I think the Ducey administration probably more so. Last year Andy Tobin voted against the bill that Governor Brewer ended up vetoing. Obviously, the administration has made a decision that they want to move forward with the tactic they're taking and with figuring out some legislation to allow for Uber and Lyft to operate within the bounds of the law, which they're currently not doing. So I'm sure they'll be involved in some way. But even last year, even though Governor Brewer's administration didn't like the bill, Weights and Measures was still technically neutral, even though behind the scenes they were involved in kind of a more technical aspect.
We'll work it out in closed caucus. Don't you understand?
Thank you, Howard, for that perfect segue.
Nice segue.
Jim, a loaded question here. What do Republican House members have to hide?
Hey, loaded question. Yes, definitely. But really, we don't know because, well, I guess because they'll end up hiding it. But more to the point, there was a discussion this week about closing caucuses for any reason. State law and House rules have always allowed for closed caucuses for certain reasons, and they essentially amended the rules to say we can go into closed caucus for any reason, not just to get legal advice, for instance, or to vote on new leaders. There really weren't any good explanations as to what sort of things would precipitate a closed caucus or would need that kind of that closed door discussion, other than I think they used the term "quote unquote" like family issues.
Yeah.
Doug, there are some who've made the point too that when Governor Napolitano was governor, and there were certain budget talks that went on in private, and people didn't quite get as excited about that. What's your thought on that?
Well, that's true. And as a matter of fact, I tried looking up the history of closed caucuses, and over the years, they've gone back and forth. They've had back and forth about whether or not it's easier, better to get business done when you've got the doors closed and then open them up and let the press in. I think I have less objection to the fact that they spend some time together alone like this, and then they do in the way they characterize it with this unctuous family stuff. Please spare me.
And the fact is, look, the Arizona Constitution allows the House and Senate to make its own rules. The open meetings law has a specific exemption. You go to Congress, you're not going to get to walk into the Republican caucus there. And so it becomes a question. Look, when I came here in '82 to cover the legislature, a lot of caucuses were closed. Look, it didn't bother me because the fact is the caucus would open, you'd see who's unhappy, and that would be the person to spill his or her guts. And so the votes still need to take place in public. You'll find out who squeezed whose body parts later, and I'm not as alarmed about this as some folks are.
To the extent this really bothers me, it is a First Amendment open government issue that's broader than the Republican caucuses here. I mean, Cheryl Atkinson, former CBS reporter, was before Congress talking about the fact that the current administration treats reporters like they're enemy agents. And Jill Abramson, the former editor in the New York Times, was making pretty much the same point when she was talking about her access for her reporters from the Times. And I'm not just getting on the Obama administration. There is a distinct trend in government generally to close the doors on people.
Well, and some of it is optics. I'll give you another example. Up until now, in the governor's office, there has been a sign-in sheet, basically, a little visitor log, and it's been, some people sign in, some people don't. All of a sudden, log disappears. Questions from our friends at the Capital Times, they say, well, it wasn't any reason to have it because it wasn't accurate. Seems to me the answer is, we'll make people sign in. Their idea was simply just get rid of the log. Again, there's no public records law violation because this is not a document you're required to keep, but from an optics standpoint, for all the people who keep talking about openness in government, is this the message you want to send?
Perception, Jim, how important is that?
Oh, yeah, and it's kind of piggybacking on what both Howie and Doug have said, it's a movement away from, there's been a movement towards opening government and opening things to the public, and both of these instances, really, while they may not be, the end-all, be-all, they're movements away from that. And back moving certain parts of government back in, out of the light that they've been in for however long. The House rules have been there for a long time. The best we could tell, it was Governor Hull who instituted this log in the governor's office. So you're looking at a couple generations, of public and reporters who have used that as a way to keep an eye on, who is the governor's office meeting with and what people are they talking with and about what issues.
Well, and Doug, in the broader sense, and we always bring this up even when it comes to getting voters to be more interested in going to the polls, what makes the public care about this? When we look at turnout, when we look at legislative approval, when we look at how much people really care about the log, one would hope that they care about freedom of press, whether in reality or perception, but do they? Does the public really care?
Well, I think pretty consistently that no one's going to be crying crocodile tears on behalf of the press because they can't get into a meeting, but that inhibits our ability to relate the story back to them.
And that's really the key. It's not that they care about the press. Our rights are no different in Arizona under the open meeting law, under the public records law, than their rights. But when they don't get to find out something, you'll hear from them, well, why didn't you tell us that the governor had met with so-and-so? Why didn't you tell us that the House in closed caucus decided to get rid of this agency? Well, we didn't know that until it was full-blown out on the floor. And that becomes the question.
Guys, I want to move on to both Democratic and Republican state parties picking chairs. Republicans decided to stick with Robert Graham. The Democrats went with Alexis Tamarone. Howie, let me start with you on this one. John McCain, of course, in the past has been censured by his party. In this case, there were some people who turned their backs to him. How important is the chair of the party? And is John McCain starting to turn the tide as he considers whether to run again in 2016?
Well, it may be finally that excuse my expression, the wackadoodle element of the Republican Party may be losing some of its strength. Look, the precinct committee people, the folks who bother to run for office for the privilege of going out and knocking on doors and do that stuff, have always been far more conservative than the folks in the rest of the party. These are the folks who censored John McCain. There's also perhaps a belief that, look, we keep censoring him and he keeps getting elected. So the question becomes, what's the point? Why keep pushing this angle and if all we're getting is bad publicity?
Doug, who had a worse week, AJ LaFaro or Tiger Woods?
I think Tiger Woods had an awful day in particular,
Yes.
But AJ LaFaro, yes, he's not. I think in the grander scheme of things, I think he's not the favorite person right now in the party. I think I think that these grandstanding attempts to put the spotlight on me are backfiring him, and which is inevitable. I mean, he's not in a position of power really.
Jim, does this hurt Doug Ducey in any way? Is he associated with more the McCain camp? Does he try to sort of straddle the line?
I'm not quite sure what kind of an effect this is going to have on Doug Ducey, other than in as much as the Republican Party gets to maintain its leadership. It was leadership that, by all accounts, really repaired a lot of the damage that had been done to the party or done, with the party infrastructure, or at least the perceived damage in a lot of circles. And it had really turned the party back into something more akin to what we saw maybe a decade ago, as opposed to what we'd seen in the intervening time. And so to have a functional state party and to have one that is supportive of the governor, as opposed to what we saw in the last, during Governor Brewer's tenure, where you had Republican Party leaders taking shots at the governor, I think that's all good news, really, for Doug Ducey and every other Republican.
There's one other thing you got to keep an eye on, and this deals more with the higher in office you go. Parties are becoming less relevant given the nature of dark money. When you have the Koch brothers saying, what's $900 million among friends, they become the source of picking and choosing the candidates, of financing the candidates, and the parties will become sort of irrelevant in some ways.
And thank you for presaging my column for Sunday, but
But folks, spend the $2, buy his column.
But really, if you're a Democrat, who do you want to be handling money on behalf of your party? Do you want Debbie Wasserman Schultz, or do you want Tom Steyer in charge of it? I would say, as much as perhaps conservatives dislike Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's the face of the party, and she should be the one that handles money, at least more than dark money specialists like Steyer.
And it's, it's been interesting because when I started, before we had campaign finance, you had people like Burton Barr as the speaker. Burton had the largest political action committee in the state because there were no limits and he could give to everyone else. Well, then they took it back and then the parties said, well, we've got exemptions, you can give more to the parties. Well, now, since Citizens United, since everything else, we're again moving away from that. So, look, power, money are equivalent. You got the money, you can have the power.
Jim, that being said about the parties, the Democrats selected Alexis Tamarone to be their chair. She used to work for Harry Mitchell. She also managed Richard Carmona's Senate campaign. Democrats can raise money in the state. We've seen that, but can they raise enough money to fight against Republican money and independent group money on top of that?
Remains to be seen. I mean, they could certainly raise enough money, to be competitive and to be in the conversation. The reality is the way the Democratic fundraising works in Arizona, a lot of it does, they kind of do a top-down approach. A lot of money goes to national groups and then gets filtered out to the states. So, just going through the campaign finance reports for the past cycle for Arizona's Democratic Party, you saw a lot of money coming from the DCCC, from the DNC, from groups like that out to here in order to kind of help shore up those campaigns and get those ground games going. But certainly Alexis Tamarone is someone who makes sense as a chairman. If you figured the primary job is to raise money and organize the troops, her background in politics is raising money. I mean, she's served as finance directors for a number of campaigns.
So, Doug, based on the party weakness, are Democrats going to be even swimming further upstream?
I think Jim's absolutely correct that the where the money comes to Democrats in this state is a big factor, and they're just victims of a national focus on their party.
I think only because I've mentioned swimming upstream how I have to bring this up. There was a report in The Hill, a publication out of Washington, D.C., that John McCain possibly could face challenges from either Matt Salmon or David Schweikert. What do you make of that?
Well, this happens regularly. Look, it's sort of like there are some people who you're going to have to take out of that office in a box. We found out this week Sheriff Joe is running again. I mean, a shock of shocks.
But Clarence Dupnick is not.
I give it. Clarence is not. Clarence is finally retiring as Pima County Sheriff. There will always be people who will explore, who will do one of these things and say, is there the will out there? Is there the money? And it comes, we keep talking about money around this table. As long as John McCain is able to raise millions and millions of dollars, unless you have some burning issue. J.D. Hayworth thought he had a burning issue in immigration. Well, you do remember Senator Hayworth, of course. I don't know that, that Salmon or Schweikert or anyone else wants to risk a comfortable, safe position to go up against somebody who will have the money and the national audience and the national media and the name ID.
Doug, how much money would it take?
Oh gosh, I think it would take. McCain's going to have something on the order of 8 figures at least. 10 million is a starting point, I would think.
Jim, based on how you know Schweikert and Salmon, does either one seem more likely?
If I had to say right now, I'd say Salmon's probably the more likely. That was the one thing that struck me about that article was some of the comments from Schweikert seemed to be, I'm interested in it, but I don't know if I really want to. And he seemed he seemed reticent, willing to explore it, but reticent to maybe jump in. Obviously, it's still really early. No one's probably going to make a decision on jumping into this race. Probably for another 6 months. But then I did talk to a couple folks who were really close to Salmon, who said, yeah, this thing is all speculation. This is all unmitigated baloney. The idea that he is seriously looking at it and exploring and setting up some kind of foundation. He's not. Yes, he's thought about it. The talk is out there, but it's more outside people thinking, we don't like John McCain. Who is out there that we can get to run against him? Hey, Matt Salmon looks like a great guy.
And why would you burn all your bridges and all that money when eventually there will be an open seat here, whether it's McCain's or Flake's?
I think a big part of this is going to be an awareness of just how much dark money is out there that's against McCain.
That's true. That's true, and that brings us back to where we started. Look, you get somebody, some group, and that's deciding, look, we can't stand McCain for whatever reason, whether it's war policies or whether it's immigration policies or something else, then you've changed the whole thing, particularly since, while McCain can't technically coordinate with them, look, he knows where his money's coming from. and whoever runs against him will know where the money's coming
Well,
from.
and I think also, you know, we've seen it in polling over the past 3-4 years. You know, everyone polls favorabilities on McCain for all these races, and you've seen his numbers drop. I mean, I don't think there's really much question that he is vulnerable, probably more vulnerable than he has been in a long time, if maybe ever. But the question is there going to be a credible candidate that can go up against him? And is, you know, like Howie said, I mean, what kind of money is going to come from those outside groups and rally and coalesce around somebody? Or are you going to end up with a fractured system or a flawed candidate, you know, someone who, you know, like in the Hayworth campaign, where McCain and his allies can just hammer him?
Jim, let's come back to one word you used before, which is one of my favorite words to use at this table, which is speculation. And in the Capital Times yellow sheet, it was speculated upon that perhaps Christine Jones might run for mayor. We found out Mayor Stanton will officially declare he's running for re-election next week. Why is Christine Jones a potentially attractive candidate?
For a couple of reasons. First of all, is because she's a Republican who was just recently in a high-profile race. You know, secondly, she has the ability to raise money, although raise maybe, you know, in quotes, because, you know, her gubernatorial campaign was funded largely by herself, and she had some well-heeled allies like Bob Parsons, who helped run an independent campaign. I mean, she's got access to capital, whether it's her own or other people's, that a lot of candidates don't. And for a race like mayor, you're talking an off-year race. You know, it's an odd-numbered year race. It's you know, it's a low-profile race. Turnout tends to be a little bit low. It's the kind of thing where if she were to walk in and say, yeah, I've got $2 million, I'm going to pump into this race, that changes the dynamics dramatically.
But you need more than that. You need to tell people why Phoenix is not properly functioning. Now, there are people, you know, like Sal DiCiccio, who has his own reason of why Phoenix is not properly functioning, and a lot of that is the unions and everything else. But if people are satisfied that, you know, the trolleys run on time, that the potholes are being fixed, that the city has a good image, certainly what's going on this weekend, you know, is very positive, they're going to say, why would I want to change?
And Doug, it's a nonpartisan race, of course, but we would know that there would be one side against the other. And Phoenix as a big city is going to be pigeonholed as a left-of-center city. Is that actually the case?
Well, I think it's got a left-of-center council directing it. I think it's got a very pro-public sector union council, union generally, for that matter. My perception of the mayor's prospects of getting reelected really focused around the lack of a viable alternative to him. He hasn't done anything terribly wrong. There have been controversies of police chief. They haven't been pegged to him.
Yeah.
So he's got that going for him, but he hasn't done anything big. He hasn't really set the world on fire. He hasn't made it a look at me sort of administration.
But you almost can't do that in the city manager form of government, which is the other part of it, which protects him from when the police chief runs into trouble.
Yeah.
But you're right. Look, you're not going to. There are people who have made this personality. Terry Goddard was a prime example. But Terry got in based on changing the whole district system, the whole election system, and it was all about Terry. Obviously, it never made him governor or anything else for that matter. He did get to be AG. I don't know whether you can in a mayor in a city like Phoenix, whether the mayor really can rise above that.
The mayor of Phoenix has not been a great launching point for political careers. That's true, but I would say that every mayor prior to this mayor has had something that he could point to and say, this is something big I did, big relative to the size of the city. Skip Rimza getting financing for park expansion, for example. Something that I think this is something that all politicians really have to be able to do, to say is that at this level, to say, I did something on behalf of voters.
Gentlemen, our last few seconds, even with the rain falling, has this been a good week for Phoenix as far as the Super Bowl, hosting the Super Bowl? Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's things. We'll find out on Sunday, I guess, how good the week ends up being. But yeah, I think it's been a good week. It's been high profile, and there hasn't been anything, at least not down at the Capitol, that's detracted from it.
Doug, a lot of traffic though.
A lot of traffic. I think they've handled it pretty well. I'm just astonished at what they've packed down in downtown Phoenix. It's a sight to behold.
And Howie?
Well, let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to Phoenix, folks.
Just don't walk under a ladder.
Yeah,
Gentlemen,
good luck to you, pal.
guys, thanks for the conversation. Monday on Arizona Horizon, we'll get a recap of the Super Bowl. First, we'll hear from the mayor of Glendale for his take, then an official from the Arizona Sports and Tourism Authority will give us his review. That's Monday at 5:30 and 10 on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, ASU Athletic Director Ray Anderson stops by with the latest in Sun Devil sports. Wednesday, another legislative update with the Arizona Capitol Times. Thursday, we'll look at the legal and privacy concerns of drones. And Friday, it's another edition of the Journalist Roundtable. That's it for now. Thanks very much for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of 8, members of your Arizona PBS station. Thank you.